Let's talk about our great country, India, the land of mystics, culture, spirituality, and ancient wisdom. A civilization so advanced that even our rivers have texture. India, where talent thrives. Prove that our system works so well that the most talented people immediately leave it. A nation built on flawless planning. Visionaries then, visionaries now. Continuity is important. This video is not about blame. It's about our design. It's about our system. It's about something personal.
You think you're tired because you slept late. You think you're overweight because you lack discipline. You think your father's heart attack was genetics. You think diabetes just runs in the family. I want to ask you something uncomfortable. How many of you know someone who is on metformin? How many of you are under 40 and already on BP medication? Now here's the real question. Do you think that's random? We love the word lifestyle disease, as if all of us independently woke up one day and said, you know what, I would like systemic inflammation. But what if I told you this isn't about lifestyle habits? It's about habitat. It's about architecture. Because you can engineer a sick population without ever passing a law that says, make them sick. You just design the environment. This is not a conspiracy video. It's worse. It's about the air you cannot see, water you assume is clean, food you trust by habit, and cities that quietly metabolize you into disease. The video is about how incentives work in our system, and the numbers are not subtle. If 1.7 million people died every single year from something foreign, there would be daily death ticker, civil defense mock drills, primetime outrage, international panic. If that number came from a foreign missile program, we would call it war. What if I told you these 1.7 million premature deaths annually are attributed to air pollution? But you see no emergency session of parliament, no national mourning, because the killer is invisible. And because the killer is profitable. In 2021, the WHO lowered the annual safe PM 2.5 limit from 10 micrograms per cubic meter to 5. Not because pollution doubled, because the evidence became undeniable. Delhi average annual 2.5 is often 80 to 100. That's 16 to 20 times higher. 16 times. If a food product had 16 times the allowed toxin, it would be banned. But air is not sold in packets. Not yet. Large cohort analysis covering millions of individuals across North America, Europe, and Asia show that for every 10 microgram per cubic meter increase in long-term PM 2.5 exposure, all-cause mortality rises approximately 6 to 10%. Not lung irritation, mortality. Air pollution is no longer considered a respiratory issue. It is a cardiovascular accelerator. Cardiovascular mortality accounts for over 28% of total deaths in India. Let me tell you how it works. PM 2.5 particles are small enough to bypass your upper airway defenses. They enter alveoli, they cross into the bloodstream. They trigger systemic inflammation. They damage endothelium. They accelerate atherosclerosis. But we frame heart attacks as personal failure. You should have eaten better. Because particulate matter negotiates with your vegetable intake. We all know culturally how pollution is normalized. It is background scenery. It is the city's personality. We check AQI like weather. Today it's 180. Imagine saying, today the drinking water has mild fecal content, but it's fine, we're used to it. But air is invisible, so denial is easier. Water. The Ganga is worshipped by millions, yet multiple stretches of it remain biologically unsafe for diet consumption. Industrial discharge. Untreated waste. That's our holy river, Goddess Ganga. Mumbai is often described as home to one of the richest municipal corporations in Asia, and yet Safe, continuous drinking water remains non-existent. Indoor wins awards for cleanliness. Boiling water still wins survival. In several regions across India, households still rely on boiling, filtering, or storing water because trust in the tap is a trap, and people say I can't trap. Food. If you haven't had food poisoning at least once a year, are you even local? Street food, we joke that extra bacteria builds immunity. Foreign bloggers romanticize it. Yes, flavor of unregulated supply chains. Food safety enforcement struggles with scale. Informal markets dominate. Inspection capacity is limited. We celebrate resilience. Meanwhile, gastrointestinal disease remains common. We normalize risk because it tastes familiar. According to Global Burden of Disease Study, diarrheal disease is among the leading cause of death in children under 5. Typhoid fever remains endemic, with India contributing a significant share of global burden. But sure, the real concern is whether the Pani Puri water is spicy enough. Viral hepatitis A and E continue to be transmitted through contaminated food and water, causing jaundice outbreaks that periodically make headlines and then vanish. National food safety surveys have repeatedly detected adulteration in milk, oils, and spices, but the packaging says pure, so we bow respectfully to the font. Street vendors are not villains. They are surviving in regulatory gray zones, yet enforcement magically appears only when cameras do. Noise. Chronic exposure above 65 decibels is linked to hypertension. Indian traffic peaks 85 to 95 decibel. Your nervous system was designed for occasional threat. We converted it into background music. We honk at red lights. Sympathetic nervous system activated daily. Cortisol elevated daily. Blood pressure elevated daily. And then we say, why is everyone so stressed nowadays? No, why did we design stress into the environment? It is estimated 101 million people are living with diabetes. That's 11.4% of the population. And another 136 million considered pre-diabetic as of 2023. Again, we call it lifestyle disease. What lifestyle? Broken sidewalks, 2-hour-long commutes, unsafe walking, car-centric cities. When movement is no longer default, sedentary lifestyle isn't a choice. It's architecture. We built flyovers, removed walkability, and then blamed discipline. Psychology. Because the real genius of slowly degrading system is that it never feels like collapse. If tomorrow morning pollution doubled overnight, there would be panic. But when it increases gradually over decades, it becomes background. The human brain adapts to gradual change. It normalizes. That's called habituation. And habituation is powerful. It keeps societies stable, but it also keeps societies stagnant. Power cuts, buy an inverter. Bad air, buy an air purifier. Unsafe roads, buy an SUV. Overcrowded hospitals, buy insurance. Weak schools, private tuition. Every private workaround reduces collective pressure. And when collective pressure drops, structural reform slows. This is not a moral accusation, it's a feedback loop. We adapt. Adaptation reduces urgency. Reduced urgency preserves system. System blames the individual, because individual blame is politically convenient. If it's your fault, the system is innocent, and systems protect themselves. We call this resilience, but resilience without reform is adaptation to damage. It's surviving something that shouldn't be normal. We debate ideology endlessly. Left, right, center, religion, identity. Meanwhile, particulate matter is bipartisan. Cortisol does not check voting records. Hypertension is secular. Stroke is inclusive. Disease does not care about your stance on nationalism. It follows exposure. It follows infrastructure. It follows density. And then we do something fascinating. We romanticize struggle. We say, Indians are tough. Yes, because they have to be. When baseline stress is high, endurance becomes identity. but endurance is not the same as well-being. Solutions. Governance is accumulation. Energy policy influences air, transport policy influences noise and environment. Urban zoning influences density. Industrial enforcement influences emissions. Healthcare funding influences survival. When 1.7 million premature deaths per year are linked to air pollution, that is not seasonal fluctuation, that is a policy outcome. Not a single decision, 1,000 small ones. And because the effects are diffuse, responsibilities diffuse. And when responsibilities diffuse, accountability fades. Because this is where people get defensive. This is not anti-nation, this is anti-denial. You can love a country and still question its systems. In fact, that's the only serious form of patriotism. We chase growth metrics, GDP, infrastructure expansion, industrial output, but growth measured without health adjustment is incomplete. If productivity rises but chronic disease rise with it, are we measuring success or acceleration? If pollution-driven mortality removes working-age adults prematurely, is that invisible cost included in celebration? We treat health as healthcare, but health is upstream. Air, water, noise, urban design, work culture, food systems. Health care is downstream repair, and downstream repair is expensive. Upstream prevention is political. Why does this persist? Because short-term incentives dominate long-term consequences. Election cycles are short, disease cycles are long. Pollution exposure accumulates over years. Policy impact is often visible after political tenure ends. So urgency drifts and citizens adapt. Adaptation lowers outrage. Outrage is seasonal. Pollution spike, trending for a week. Then cricket, then some festival, then something else. The nervous system cannot sustain alarm forever, so it shuts down. And shutdown feels normal. Now let's be brutally honest. We participate. We demand convenience, cheap goods, 10 minutes delivery, private comfort. We tolerate shortcuts when they benefit us. We criticize enforcement when it slows us down. That's not coherent. None of this means collapse is inevitable, but it does mean the narrative is incomplete. Disease is not purely personal. It is patterned. Patterns reveal structure. And once you see the structure, individual blame feels insufficient, and systemic reforms feels necessary. Systemic reform is uncomfortable. It requires trade-offs. It requires enforcement. It requires saying no to convenience. It requires saying yes to long-term thinking. And long-term thinking is politically expensive. So we settle. We settle for adaptation. We settle for resilience. We settle for it could be worse. And slowly, very slowly, we redefine normal. That is the quiet part. Not dramatic collapse, not apocalyptic, just incremental compromise. Until high BP at 35 feels ordinary. Until diabetes at 40 feels common. Until pollution masks feel seasonal. Until exhaustion feels adult. And the most dangerous sentence becomes, this is just how it is.